There seems to be a general sentiment online about Exodus, in that some people seem to be disappointed by the fact that the aliens in the game are of terrestrial origin, being quote-unquote just evolved humans, and that all the aliens are kind of not really alien due to them being terrestrial in origin. I use the term sentiment lightly, meaning that not that many are voicing these concerns, but among existing concerns, this seemed to be the most prevalent one. As a Mass Effect fan, I get it. I personally didn't like that there were no extraterrestrial aliens at first either. But the more I thought about it, I realized that it is more interesting than I first thought. In fact, I have come to quite like the concepts of the celestial aliens. Let's ask the question: why do some people seem to be disappointed by the fact that aliens are of terrestrial origin and not extraterrestrial? Well, I think that the reason for that is twofold. One is that of the Mass Effect's variety of aliens and alien culture, Exodus can seem almost disappointing and come across as a bit of a letdown when being compared to Mass Effect. The second one is that due to Exodus aliens being terrestrial in origin, they can at first glance seem to be missing that allure that science fictions and aliens have in general. There seems to be a lack of mystery, and they can come across as non-strange or non-mysterious, and ultimately, to some people, not alien. I can kind of understand where that train of thought is coming from. But let's think about it. While they are terrestrial in origin, Celestials are former humans that have gone through thousands, if not tens of thousands of years of evolution and genetic modification, and ultimately, as a result, become something so far from human beings that they now are something else entirely. And comparing a Celestial to a human would be like comparing a Prothean to a collector. In short, they ultimately are or have become something alien. Celestials are indeed strange and bear no resemblance to humans, who they seemingly all look down upon. The reason why Celestials chose to genetically engineer themselves has to do with evolutionary principles of adaptation and survival, with a bit of a twist. Basically, the story goes like this. Celestials evolved from human beings, who settled in the Centauri cluster several thousands of years ago, that through the help of genetic engineering, thrived and flourished, creating a multitude of diverse cultures and advanced civilizations. This range of diversity arose because of the early human settlers going in different ways, settling in different planets, and having different directions on how to live and create their societies. And above all, competition. Just like natural selection, competition because limitation of resources. These resources being mainly green worlds. The competition for these green worlds seemed to have lasted for around 6,000 years during a period called the Remnant Era, where incredibly powerful weapons were created and used in massive genocidal wars, where entire civilizations were annihilated and even the planets that they fought for were destroyed. These wars for the planet was a driving force for the Celestials' evolution and led to many of the species that we see today and the extinction of countless others. Different Celestials chose to modify themselves and evolve in different ways, both for adaptation and primarily also to get an edge in the war against the other Celestials. The conflict of the Remnant Era, where the war effort was at max, and entire star systems were transformed into factories for weapons of mass destruction, ultimately culminated in the Formation Wars, where the violence between rival celestial empires obliterated hundreds of habitable worlds across the cluster, during which the Celestials began to take on the different forms that one can see today. In the aftermath of the Formation Wars, the emergence of the supremely powerful species of Celestials, referred to as the Elohim, permanently changed the landscape of the Centauri cluster, introducing new forms of technology called the Gates of Heaven, an interstellar network linking all the systems of Centauri, which allows ships to travel between systems at near light speed, among with other forms of technology and also intransgressible laws, such including a ban on the destruction of habitable worlds to prevent the genocidal conflict that nearly destroyed the entire cluster from happening again. This led to the Crucible era, which was a long period of peace, status quo, and stability, where the Elohim, in addition to building the Gates of Heaven, also used their hyper-advanced technology to move hundreds of habitable planets to completely new systems. Among these, Lydon, a moon placed into close proximity orbit around a gas giant in the Malakbel system, where you as a player undoubtedly will start your journey in the world of Exodus. From here, I want to talk about the many various celestial species. We don't know much about them as of yet, but we do know that there is a large variety of different types of celestials, potentially even in the hundreds. One of the species that we, the players, undoubtedly will have to do with the most is definitely going to be the Imperial Celestials of the Crown Dominion, or in short, the Crown Celestials, which is currently the species that we know the most about, mainly from the book The Archimedes Engine, and also from the Traveler's Handbook. Crown Celestials, also known as Imperial Celestials, are a species that live in the core of the Centauri cluster. They have a general body similarity to humans, but reaches to a height of approximately 2.5 meters when fully mature. They also have a unique biotechnological culture called the Mindline, where a volunteer serves as a host body for the consciousness of a Crown Celestial every 7 or 8 decades or so, before transferring it again, which when done successfully allows a Crown Celestial to live for untold millennia. It doesn't seem like no other Celestials that we know of, at least for the moment, have this feature. Mind lines are usually established between offspring and parents, for which the offspring often compete to become the most suitable to serve as a host. The host contributes genetic information to the mind line, and the old consciousness of the previous Celestial is preserved, allowing for uninterrupted personality continuation. Beyond the mind line, the Imperial Celestials have a very different reproductive procedure compared to humans, where the females lays eggs, referred to as spawning. One celestial female can spawn several eggs. Imperial clutches typically consist of 4 to 7 eggs, and in some cases even more. And in a striking difference from humanity, male celestials are the ones that carries the fertilized eggs in a marsupial-like pouch, where the eggs are transferred and remain for about 6 months before the offspring emerge. This flips the traditional parental roles on their head. It comes across as, at least from what I have gathered, that the father's relationship with its offspring is more like a human mother's than a father's. They come across as a bit more maternal than paternal, dealing with their children. When it comes to their societal structure, the Crown Celestial seems to have a matriarchal society, where they live within an empire ruled by an empress and 5 queens, where every 60 years The queens rotate with each other, and another one takes the role of empress. This structure exists to ensure maximum stability within the empire, which is, considering the nature of the crowned celestials with their mind line, a necessity in the eyes of the ruling class. They also maintain an extremely hierarchical society consisting of 6 ruling grand houses that are comprised of several powerful grand families. Performance within this societal structure and these grand houses can quickly lead to promotions or demotions on a semi-regular basis. They also maintain a class of human workers that are referred to as Uranics, that serve the Celestials in manners of food production and governance on 2 major planets. Considering the views that most Celestials have on all humans, the humans are near universally looked down upon, but the crowned Celestials differs from many other Celestials. They seem to be of the opinion that there is a certain utility in humans, and as long as they remain peaceful and work hard, they are treated relatively well in the Crown Dominion, but they are still second-class citizens. They also have indentured servants in indentured human squads that, from what I understand, often serve on warships as fighter pilots, as seen in the Secret Level episode. Unfortunately, we do not have much information on the other species as of the making of this video, but there is some available on a few of the other Celestials. The Elohim we know next to nothing about, except from the fact that they created and built the most important technology in the cluster, and perhaps even the known universe, which are the gates of heaven, which allows for convenient near light speed travel. They also created the Archimedes engine by enabling the movement of entire planets within a star system, repositioning them into life-sustaining so-called Goldilocks habitable zones. The Elohim are clearly the most powerful Celestials that have ever lived, and even after disappearing thousands of years ago, the laws and also the rules of engagement that they established are still followed and respected even today, if only out of fear. For example, if a dominion or species violates any of the set rules or laws, the gates of heaven no longer functions for the particular violator. The Elohim will almost certainly play a role in Exodus in a similar way as the Protheans did in the Mass Effect games. Another contemporary species that we know of but have less information on are the Heresy Celestials, which, just like the other Celestials, look down upon humans and apparently consider themselves as the pinnacle of celestial evolution. The Heresy Dominion considers the Crown Dominion to be barely one step above so-called human stock, and don't believe that they are quote-unquote true Celestials. They believe that the Crown Dominion's focus on preserving mindline preservation has negatively impacted their evolution. These Heresy Celestials have spindly 3-meter tall bodies with 4 eyes, 4 arms and 2 legs. The hands of their upper arms have 5 fingers, each of which has 3 joints, while the hands of their lower arms have 3 claws. Their arms and legs are designed to have excellent mobility in 0G, even though their known habitat clusters have rotational gravity. They have the strength similar to the biotech muscles that other celestial dominions use in armored suits. Heresy Dominion Celestials also have a lower body temperature than other Celestials, and they have cone-like projection on either side of their heads. Their expected lifespan seems to last for 400 or 500 years or so. Little is known at this time about their broader societal structure, but unlike Crown Celestials, they do not propagate through the mindline connection. Also, unlike Crown Celestials, the Heresy Dominion Celestials value diplomacy highly, and the Heresy Dominion has the largest ship fabrication astro-engineering industry within 20 light years. Now, you have most likely already encountered the Mara Yama in either the Traveler's Handbook or in the trailer that came out a while ago. These nightmare-fueled creatures are without a doubt one of the most alien types of Celestials. They also appear to be the most dangerous and most classically evil of the Celestials. Something that is interesting about the Mara Yama is that they do not seem to have a constant form. Rather, they can morph and shift form depending on need and also environment. They also appear to possess a multi-consciousness referred to as multi-moiety consciousness. Unlike the other Celestials, the Mara Yama inhabits massive ships composed of what seems to be organic-like material, and the society seems to be made up of huge fleets. They also do not use the gates of heaven for travel, which I believe is most likely because they can't. Instead, they are traversing the cluster at a slower pace than the other Celestials, which makes them much more unpredictable. They are infamously known to capture sentient beings and torturing them to extract memories and emotions from them, though no one knows why they do this or what they seek to achieve by doing so. What makes them dangerous is both their unpredictability and their alienness, because they are neither physiologically relatable to the other Celestials, nor are their intentions or tactics. It is almost certain that the Mara Yama will be prominent in the Exodus game as antagonist. There are many types of Celestials in the world of Exodus, but information as of now is sparse at best. The Talloch-Te Celestials, for example, are physiologically similar to the Mara Yama in that they too have evolved and developed a multi-moiety consciousness and existence where they have a primary body and multiple secondary bodies. They can move parts or all of the minds between their primary bodies and the others. They can also reintegrate their minds into their primary bodies when required, and much like the Mara Yama, they can body morph into different physical forms, some of which humans find disturbing. They have a so-called gravity form, which humans usually find less disturbing than the other forms. They also live on massive ships, made of huge fleets, but unlike the Mara Yama, focuses on trading, and they are very careful to distance themselves from the atrocities committed by the Mara Yama Dominion. It is unknown if the Talloch-Te and Mara Yama has the same origin. Then you have the Ratarajan Celestials, which are an insular species that lives within 10-meter spheres, which leads to the speculation that they potentially might have merged with technology, kind of like synthesis in Mass Effect, where organic and synthetic life supposedly merges into one. The planets have no population centers, just individual spheres. No human has seen a Ratarajan Celestials, and it is unknown how many of the other Celestials, if any, has seen a Ratarajan. There exist many other interesting groups and species of Celestials in the universe of Exodus, but we simply have next to no information on them, partially because some are supposed to be a mystery, and others are supposed to be discovered in-game. Lastly, I want to mention the Great Game. The Great Game refers to a complex and ruthless competition for power and influence amongst various dominions and factions in the Centauri cluster. It is a multifaceted conflict that is waged through intricate strategies, economic manipulation, technological advancements, and ideological maneuvering, with physical conflict only being employed as a last resort. The tools of the Great Game includes manipulation, deception, shifting alliances, disinformation, diplomacy, spying, and subtle threats that each dominion uses to gain advantage over the others in attempts to weaken and destabilize the other dominions to further its own interests. The great game is played to avoid the near constant violence culminating in the formation wars that plagued the Celestials during the Remnant era. It is usually deliberately subtle and plays out over decades, centuries, or even thousands of years. And I believe that this too will be featured in the game in a way that we, the players, will most likely be enmeshed into the game and also the consequences of it. Potentially and specifically the great game of the Crown Celestials and the Mara Yama Dominion, which are known to play very long term and potentially the most complicated games. Taking all of these things into account, the important point is how alien the Celestials truly are. The absolute strangeness and vast differences between them qualify them as being just as alien and interesting as traditional extraterrestrials can be. We also don't know much about how most of the current Celestials evolved, or have any details of what kind of biological engineering they employed and how rapid it was. My hope is that we can learn more about the biotech that they used to drive their evolution and also to engineer the various changelings that you can encounter throughout the world of Exodus. There's also the mystery of the Elohim. No one knows what happened to them. Have they, despite their incredible technology, been annihilated? Have they left the cluster? Or did they transcend into another plane of existence? Will there at some point eventually be extraterrestrial aliens introduced into the game? Is there another threat that we do not know of yet? Questions that I believe will undoubtedly be answered when we get to play a fully released version of the game and dive deep into the lore of Exodus. As always, thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you have something to share or know something that I don't, you are welcome to share in the comments. Until next time, traveler.